If you think that raising prices is going to fix your profit, you're already losing money. Recently, we worked with one of our MSP partners, 3 million turnover, losing £300,000 a year. This is a serious world to be in. All they're doing is trying to grow the revenue, but not looking at the difference it's making to the bottom line. Building a service catalogue is not an easy task. You've got to really stick to it, got to really drive that forward, and it will take time to unfold them 20 years of business into what does it actually mean in words. The recent client we worked with did exactly this. 6-month journey, looking at that service catalogue, restructuring the whole business around that service catalogue, restructuring the PSA around that, restructuring the service and sales delivery around that. By doing this MSP partner changed the business from doing £300,000 loss to 10% net profit in that first 6 months. That is a significant change just by documenting what you deliver around sales, service and invoicing. Let's look at the common area. Actually, what should finance be doing to support the business in understanding where it's losing money? What we want to do now is bring in operational data. So bringing in that operational data specifically around time, MSPs is all about selling people's time. Bringing that data into the system means that now we can run the revenue and the finance data against that time data. So what we're actually thinking about here is, where are we losing money in different areas, let's say service and project. So in service, we typically see all MSP service desks saying we are maxed out. You never come across a service desk that says I'm not maxed out. But actually, are they maxed out or are they just running in second gear? We don't want them at fourth gear all the time, but we need to be going to that occasionally. Or are they just being busy fools? So are we actually analysing the data against our customer base, against the services we're providing, looking at the revenue versus the actual costs? So we've got costs around licensing and we've got costs around time. Both of those into the revenue gives us our profitability. We need to be driving that as a strategy across the whole business. Everybody needs to know this is what we're providing and here's the levels we want to get to. So SLI, service leadership, say that service gross margin, blended service gross margin should be 52%. So out of our revenue, we want 52% worth of profit, and that's what we need to be aiming for. So we've been working with customers on this, and it makes a dramatical difference when we start to focus, especially the technical managers, into thinking about service gross margin, not just about SLAs and how many tickets and how much kill rate have we got on tickets. Let's get them financially understanding the finances of how their departments impact the business. So we've got lots of different avenues we can look at here, but really what we're looking at is where are we spending time on what services, on what tools. So if we've got tools that are either making too much noise or they're not giving us enough information or the correct information, we need to be zooming in on that. So the other thing I just mentioned is we've got a cost around software. So have we got somebody in the business that is strategically looking at the vendors, looking at what profit we should be making out of those services, what support they should be giving us, what training they should be giving us, and what's our weak points across the whole technical team. That is going to increase our efficiencies, which ultimately increases our profits. So let's go deeper on the service desk. We're talking about a busy service desk person versus a profitable service desk person. So let's dig into that. So we've got to think about the whole thing that we're actually trying to deliver to the service desk. So as an individual in a service desk, where are they most enjoying their world? Well, they've come on board because they want to help customers and they want to fix things. They don't want to just administer a system. So let's first look at the system. How have we set up the system to make sure when a technical person is working on a ticket, they are working on it technically or they are working on it to help a customer. All the other admin functions around them should either be done by automation in the system or by another assistant, let's say a coordinator stroke dispatcher. So when we think about the journey of a ticket, when it comes into the service desk, we want somebody else triaging it, looking at the summary lines, the categories, the priorities. What's this customer want from us? Are they supported, are they not? Then aligning that to the right resource that's going to get the best result for the customer at the best time using their knowledge. Then we've got the fact that they also want to keep hold of that until they fix it. So quite often what we see is people are blowing the budgets on tickets because they just want to fix it. So we can look at that, we can dig into that, and we can say, right, we're going to use the PSA to automatically use something called ticket templates to plug into the ticket what the budget is. So we often talk about budgets when we're looking at professional services, but let's use that in the service desk world. If we've got a certain particular fault that we know should be resolved within 30 minutes, we might put a budget on there of 45 minutes. Now it's going to be someone else's task or the system's task to work out if that ticket needs escalating. And at every step of the way, we're trying to get the right person in front of that ticket to create the fastest resolution. So we're going to go from the lowest cost resource, from a tier 1, all the way up to a tier 3 when it's correct to do that. That drives efficiencies in the service desk. It means we're not creating bottlenecks, but we're also not putting time on tickets that are just going nowhere. That person has gone past their expertise and it needs moving on to create that constant journey of tickets and life cycle of tickets through the service desk. So that's the whole management around the service desk and making sure we get the right people onto the right tickets at the right time, using the system. People just don't use enough of the system and they allow people to just run away with it. Yeah, if you ask a service desk person to draw you a car, they will all draw you a car, but you haven't been descriptive enough. They're going to draw a red car, a blue car, a BMW, a Skoda. We need to be descriptive about what we want them to do with a ticket life cycle. What looks good and what doesn't look good, and then present that information, present the system, the automation around that to create a profitable engineer. So in summary, the top tips: technical managers need to know about service gross margin. They need to know how the financial of their department impact your P&L. Then the system, get the automation in place and the budgets and the escalations in place to make sure the life cycle of the ticket goes correctly. And then my third tip is have an engineer only working on technical or customer service. Anything else around them should be delivered by the system or the team. So when we're talking about driving the business forward with financial data, again, your technical manager understanding the financial data, key problem is we need to make sure that financial data is actually accurate to our best of our knowledge. Common problem we see is we don't use best practices when we're allocating where is the revenue and where is the costs. And often that can actually make a dramatical difference between your decisions and what levers you pull in the business. So we know the bottom line isn't the right place. You know, the profitability of the business isn't in the right place. But if the data above it isn't in the right place, we're going to zoom in and focus on an area and maybe pull the wrong lever. So some key factors here is we need to make sure that our services are broken down into our service catalog. So we have our revenue all broken down under a customer, and then we want our costs against that revenue. So we want to make sure our time, our labor is going against that specific service, not just one generic service. And we need to make sure the software and the tools that we use to deliver that service are also aligned to that. So that's making sure your GL of accounts, your vendor bills, your invoices, etc. are all linked to the right places, so the right pots, so we've got that right information. Another key one is technical managers, so leaders of the technical department. Often they're on the SLT, ELT, and often what I see is they get moved below gross margin. So they're then moved into admin and management costs. Anyone that's involved in the technical department, even if they're going to SLT meetings, they're supporting and they are being the conversation for technical. And so their costs should be in technical. If you remove a technical manager from technical, I would imagine service, team morale will drop. So they are there to support the technical department, and so their cost should be above the line. That can dramatically change the gross margin of the business that's reported. I've worked with a number of MSPs now where that cost has been below the line, and we actually now think our gross margin and our service gross margin is best in class, when actually you've got a significant wage, typically the largest wage of the department, that's actually being reported incorrectly. So we need to make sure the revenue and the costs are aligned to the right places around the services, and the technical leadership is above the line to make sure we've got the right gross margin figure. Small changes in finance that can deliver 15% extra margin is what we need to dig into now. Thinking about taking you away from the business. Most MSP owners under 5 million turnover are way too involved in the day-to-day operations of finance. So we need to dig into this. Let's make sure that the finance people are delivering data to you to make decisions on. So have you got a monthly board pack that comes out to you? Often when there's not external people involved like shareholders, etc., investors, we don't deliver these board packs. So your finance people, your department or person needs to be delivering a board pack, P&L, balance sheet and budget against variance, to make sure you've got the right level of information that you can then make very quick decisions on. That's what's going to make the biggest difference to your business. Too often, I find people are completely involved in finance, looking at invoicing runs, looking at billing runs. That is a finance role. That should not be on the leader of the business. The leader of the business should be spending their time looking at correct analytical data to drive the business forward, changing strategies, changing resource, pulling levers to make that 15% margin. So if you're spending time reviewing invoices, reviewing billing runs, signing off on invoices before they leave the door, or even worse, adding data to invoices, which I see so often because the systems are not set up correctly, and it needs the owner of the business to dissect that down every month to produce the MRR invoicing run. We need to fix that and get you on the strategic element of using the informed data to make differences in your business today. And for another segment of our audience, if you're watching this and thinking, no, that's great, Darren, if you've got a finance department and they can deliver that for you, but what about me? Get the right financial person external to your business. Make sure they know and they understand how you want that data to be driven and how you want to see that data, and make sure you've even got that built into their service. Lots of financial advisors will do exactly that. They will advise on your business, not just do the bookkeeping. So make sure you've got the right level of service from them, they understand your business and they understand what you need monthly from them, and even use them to dissect that information. They will be able to give you very knowledgeable information across all their base of customers of how you can drive your business. But don't focus on doing the day-to-day finance. That is not where you're going to make the biggest difference in your business, and you're going to take a lot longer than someone that can do that efficiently with the right knowledge. So my key tip for you, if you're a small business, is to outsource that in the correct way, with also your systems supporting that. We need systems that will deliver the billing quantities, the MRR invoicing, the data into the system automatically. There are now systems out there, certain PSAs, that will deliver that automatically for you, but you're just not using it. Too many times I see people altering quantities for the next 48 hours to get the monthly billing run out. Get the systems working for you, get the external advisor working for you, and that will make a dramatical difference to your business.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely ways that you can increase your profitability that aren't directly price cost. Things like documentation as well. I think that's something that a lot of MSPs strive to be better at, and it can increase their profitability, because if you're documenting properly, the next person that comes along to try and solve the next issue, the same issue, sorry, they can rely on someone that's already done it, rather than going through exactly the same steps again, wasting 20 minutes, half an hour. And that's something you can actually kind of use a PSA tool or any service desk tool to track, because you can start looking at, is your closure time going down for issues that all look the same? There's probably a whole nother discussion you could have on ChatGPT or AI models to help you get there better, get there quicker now that those are available. But those things can definitely help increase profitability.
So let's dig into this monthly board pack a bit more. So making sure you're getting this monthly board pack. P&L, really, really critical to the business, and your balance sheet. You need to make sure you understand your balance sheet, you understand what items are coming up, like VAT bills, etc. You need to be planning for that. So making sure all that data's in your system, let's say Xero or QuickBooks, making sure it's in there correctly from your financial advisors or your current internal team, and getting that out every month. It's a very quick and easy system to do, but so many people don't do it. Then if you don't understand how to read them, get people to show you how to do that. Be honest with it and spend some time working out what these numbers mean and what levers I can pull. And your budget to variance, first of all, we need to start with a budget. We need to set a budget for the next 12 months. You can go as detailed or as top level as you need to. Start off top level, work off last year's as a starting point and roll that into this year's. Then once we get a little bit more efficient, build some more data into that, and also not looking at last year. Often we bring things that we did incorrectly into the forward year and we just repeat it again. So starting from scratch every year is the best practice. But if you're only starting out, start off at top level and work on last year's data with a percentage of increase. I delivered an event last quarter to 100 MSPs, and 70% of those MSPs did not know how to read that data. So you're not on your own if you feel uncomfortable looking at this data. Just be honest with yourself and get into the right groups, into the right communities, or even with your financial advisors, and be honest about that and gain that information. It's critical that you know how to read these reports, because that's the highest and best use to your business. You need to make sure any risk is off the table. And you also need to make sure that where you're investing next is the right place. I was at another event just this week where somebody talked about how they did a sponsorship for a football team. They put all the banners up, they put all the logos up. 4 days later, he had to go back to them and say, I'm really sorry, but I need to pull out this sponsorship. All the logos had to come down, all the banners had to come down. The brand reputation of doing something like that, and just yourself, feeling that uncomfortable, delivering that to someone that you've gone into business with. But also, he then had some of his team coming to him thinking that the business was in distress, where actually he'd been given a budget from his financial advisor that was incorrect because they weren't looking at the right data and they weren't discussing it together. He was just taking their word for it that he could afford that sponsorship. So don't be in that position where you don't know those numbers. Find the information, speak to the right people, and spend time learning what to do with that data. So let's look at this in sort of functional areas of finance. What do we want to be doing? So we first of all, to get the systems right. To get the systems and the automation and the structure of those systems correct. Agreements, products, GL codes, automation of quantities, automation of invoicing runs, automation of creation of invoice even, right in the system. So we're not spending time doing things that we're already paying a software solution to do. Then secondly, get the finance function correct, whether you outsource it, whether it's your own team or not, but the BAU around finance, you shouldn't be involved in those invoicing runs, those quantity conversations, who we should pay and who we shouldn't pay. All of that should be systemized. Think about how you do that in service. You would systemize a process, you would teach engineers how to manage a ticket. It's exactly the same thing in finance. And then thirdly, your highest and best use is analyzing the data that comes back out of finance. So that board report, P&L, balance sheet, budget versus variance, working on that budget, making it better, working on the P&L, making sure you're pulling the right levers at the right time. And I would also link into that as a bonus point on the fourth, looking at resources. So look at that resource planning aligned to your P&L and your budget. Where are we going and how does that impact the structure of the business, where we're bringing on people, where we need to move people around to have the biggest impact in their role.